Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the German football podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn, and joining me, as always, is Chris Williams. Chris, how have you been?
Bryce, have been very well, thank you. Exceptional week covering European football, Football Grad Live at Anfield and then over to the Emirates. So, yeah, I've had a pretty good week. What about you? Yeah,
not too bad. I think you and I were rather happy about the performance and the scoreline that came out of Anfield last week, eh?
Yes, not very often I lose my cool in the press box, but I was up in the gantry at the top of the main stand, and I was sat next to the five live guys from BBC Radio 5 Live, and there was a couple of Liverpool fans there. So yeah, you know, when in Rome, just went mad.
Yes, indeed. So we possibly could have heard you on 5 Live. Is that what you were saying?
No, I was careful about where I shouted, "Oh, that's a great goal! Get in the back of the net." I made sure that I turned around when I said words to that effect.
Well, most certainly. We'll not get too excited just yet, Chris, until the job is done. But I think we were talking before the pod that Bayern-Liverpool semi-final would be very fun. But we'll not talk about that just yet. Manu, you're with us as well. That's Manu Veth, as always. Manu, how has your week been?
Yeah, it's been exceptionally busy because we're covering a lot of European football. And I'm heading to Europe myself in just a few days, so I'm trying to get everything in order ahead of the big trip. Of course, I'm covering the World Cup in Russia for Football Grad, but we have a few things going on before that, so trying to get everything in order. So it's been extremely busy, Bryce, but busy is good. How about you? All good?
Oh, yes, very good with me. I'm busy enough at work and enjoying the rain in London as much as I possibly can, but we've come to expect this weather, haven't we? But reigning in championships is Bayern Munich, as they've, well, more or less sailed through this season, haven't they? They started a little bit slow, I suppose, but ever since Jupp Heynckes returned to the club, it's been easy sailing for them, and they've sailed to their 28th German championship, 27th Bundesliga title. Manu, obviously you're from Munich. This is a hell of a feat for Germany's biggest side, and they all seemed extremely happy after coming from behind against Augsburg.
Yeah, you know what? This title is, the Bundesliga gets a lot of slack because Bayern have now won it 6 times in a row, and people say it's a one team league, and I don't think they understand how difficult this title actually was for Bayern to wrap up. We have to remember in October they were dead in the water. You know, this was a side that seemed to be completely falling apart, and many people, including us, sung Bayern's swan song and believed that there was no way for them to be competitive in the Bundesliga, let alone in Europe. A few months later, they're on the verge of reaching the semi-final of the Champions League. They have wrapped up the title in the semi-final of the Cup. Heynckes is building very much on, you know, immortalizing himself in Munich. And I mean, that it is remarkable because they've lost just 2 games since Heynckes has taken over, and drawn 1, I believe. So that's an incredible record. The run has been incredible, and the things that he has done is just fantastic. So to say I think of all the titles that they won from the 6 in a row, I would actually say and argue that this was the hardest one for them to win because of where they were in the beginning of the season and where they are as a side. And for Heynckes to come in and do the work that he has done is remarkable. I mean, I feel that is something, a lot of people are saying, well, this is easy for them, etc. I don't think this one was. And I think this was maybe the hardest one for them to win, of all 6 of them.
Yeah, well, that's it. I suppose when we looked back, at the start of the season and even the second half of last season, even maybe beyond that, the 3 of us were saying that they didn't quite seem as powerful as they used to be, maybe under Heynckes previously, under Guardiola. They just didn't seem right. And you got to remember when Heynckes came in, they were 5 points off the top. And Chris, now they've completed this next championship 20 points ahead. I mean, as Manu said, it's very easy to say, oh, Bayern have went and done it again, but they didn't make it easy for themselves at the start of the season, but then it seemed ever so easy as the season went on.
Well, yeah, I think it's a fantastic achievement because, as Manu and yourself have quite rightly said, if you go back to, I think it's around about match day 2 or 3, they were down in 6. Now, I'm one of the people that doesn't really look at the league table until around about Christmas anyway. But for Bayern Munich to be 6th after match day 3 was a shock. But then for them to still be, well, round about it was 3rd, wasn't it? And just before Ancelotti was sacked, they drew with Wolfsburg, and they didn't look good then. And the teams around them were getting better. So I think had he not gone and Willy Sagnol not come in for that brief little spell before Heynckes took over, I think Bayern would have dropped to maybe 4th or 5th. But they had to act, didn't they? And they acted very, very quickly. I still think that they should have probably acted at the back end of last season. I think they knew then that Ancelotti wasn't the right man in charge. Maybe they couldn't find who they needed over the summer, but I think for them to start the campaign could have backfired. Obviously, it hasn't now. As Manu's quite rightly said, they're in the latter stages of the Pokal, the Champions League, and they've claimed the title with, match days to spare in abundance in their back pocket. So they will reflect back on this victory as, they did the right thing, but I would be surprised if they ever went into that situation again where they ended the season with a manager they weren't sure of, and then gave him maybe a few match days this season after to see if he can rectify it, because they'll learn from this, and I think they learn from it very quickly. But don't take it away. It's been a fantastic achievement for them to do what they've done, and I'm more impressed with Heynckes, and we all know how good he is. But he's not had a transfer window as such, to make massive changes. He's not had a pre-season as such to really work on aspects of the game. He came in, minor tweaks, and at the very top of the game, the professional game, it's all about minor margins. And he came in and he fixed those margins. And you just have to look at their nearest rivals at the time when he came in, which was Borussia Dortmund. They've gone the opposite way. So you can only take your hat off to Bayern Munich and say congratulations on a 6th title, and it's going to be very, very interesting for whoever comes in the summer to take over from that, because as I said last week, it was Guardiola that took over from Heynckes last time, so he was able to fill those big shoes. Who does it this time? Well, we're still waiting, aren't we?
Imagine you have to take over at the end of the season. They do win the treble.
I mean, it's almost impossible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're in the same situation again, where Bayern bought Guardiola in to get them, consistently winning the Champions League. They saw what he did at Barcelona and thought, he's a man for us. Well, he came in and he didn't do that, did he? He didn't topple what Heynckes had achieved before, and he goes. Ancelotti comes in briefly in the big scheme of things, and Heynckes comes back in, and he's standing on the cusp of another treble. So I would not like that job after him, because I would liken it to replacing Alex Ferguson at Manchester United. Whoever does that, I think you're deemed to fail for the first season.
Yeah, in retrospect, I mean, this is completely out there, but maybe they should have hung on to Heynckes back when he retired the first time around. because that side might have more Champions League titles than they have now. Because Guardiola played some fantastic football, but we just saw it last week. He seems to stumble at certain cup games. He tinkers a bit too much, and then it all falls apart on him. So I know it's a little bit off topic, but just thinking back, maybe with Heynckes in charge over the last 4 years, I reckon this side could have maybe won even more.
But in saying that, if you're ever going to look for a coach to come in to your side after one stepping down, I mean, it's hard to look as a better coach to get in than Pep Guardiola, would you not say? And he does bring his own brand of football. I mean, you'd be quite happily handing that baton over, would you not?
Yeah, but Bayern retired Heynckes, more or less. They more or less went out back then and hired Guardiola and told Heynckes afterwards that Heynckes was going to retire, and they didn't actually. Heynckes was pretty upset at the time about that decision. Because he was not consulted, he was more or less retired. And yeah, I just thinking about that today, because Bayern have never played as dominant as they have. There were spells under Guardiola, but in the big matches, you didn't always see that dominance. And curious to see, of course, I could be reversing everything I'm saying now if they go out against Sevilla on Wednesday, or in the next round against whoever they will get next in the next round, and completely fall apart again and be like, oh well, oops, wrong. But I don't think they would under Heynckes. It's because you already saw the differences between the first leg against Paris and the second leg, where they almost overcame that deficit and actually almost got first place. I mean, in retrospect, it was good that they didn't get that first place in the group, but it's just the differences, that experience that Heynckes brings in. It's something that you can't buy. And I think Heynckes also has the experience to just leave the side alone, change enough, rotate enough, but leave the side alone and just let them play football. And I think maybe that is one of the big strengths that he has.
So, Manuel, what you're saying is maybe that Heynckes should get his revenge on Bayern Munich by taking the Borussia Dortmund role in the summer.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Sorry, Chris, I interrupted.
No, I think what we also need to remember is that this guy left football in 2013 and just went back to a small German town and started gardening, and went into cafes and had a cup of coffee on his way to get his paper in the morning. And he had years out the game, and he just came in and he revitalized a whole club, a giant in the game. I just think that's phenomenal. It's not like he'd been coaching every single day at a very high level. He went into retirement and he'd given up football. Obviously, he still watched football and he still kept in contact with the game. And I saw a very good documentary that the Bundesliga pushed out on their international channels. And it spoke to people in the cafe he was going in, and he was just living a normal life. And I think that is phenomenal. For a manager or a coach to do that, to walk away from the game for 4 years, and then come back into it, and take a team to the Champions League semi-final, to win the Bundesliga title with games to spare, and to be in the semi-final of Pokal. I think it's extraordinary.
It's not just the club, Chris, right? It's all the players. He managed Ribéry and Robben, got the most out of them, and they have diminishing roles, but he managed that really well to sort of tell them, look, you're not going to be playing every game anymore because there's other younger players in here that need to play. So he managed it really well. There's neither of them, and they're both hotheads, have really put up a big fuss. Arturo Vidal, completely turned his career around. He's become once again a key player by basically telling him, you're not training enough, you're being lazy. And then all of a sudden Vidal picked it up. Same with Martinez. He moved Martinez back into midfield. Fantastic move. And then finally James. James is, how often have we lauded James' season this far? He has been remarkable. So these are 5 players that he has more or less gone like, look, these are good players. They've just been managed wrong. And he just went in and boom, here we go. We're talking about 5 players that have all 5 of them in their own ways having remarkable seasons.
Yeah, obviously, I think both of you have pointed out that we were concerned when Jupp Heynckes was coming back into the Bundesliga, whether maybe football had moved on from his style of play, his coaching tact, will we say. But I feel both of you guys need to tell me just how highly does Jupp Heynckes rank as all-time maybe German managers, not just Bayern managers. Manuel, if we go to you first, I mean, how highly does this take him? Yes, the season is still not over. There's still plenty to play for, but we'll get to them in a moment. But after this championship, where exactly would you rate him?
Well, I want to wait till the season is actually over, because if he wins that second treble, he ranks among the top. Because remember, he also won the Champions League with Real. That's something that's often forgotten, right? So let's wait till the end of the season until my judgment comes out on that one.
Yeah, most certainly. That's right. That Real title back in 1998. Chris, would you say that he's going to be up there if he wins the Champions League or the Pokal, or even if he doesn't? Would you say that he's probably going to be up there as one of the greatest German coaches ever?
I think time will say that he's one of the greatest coaches ever, but I don't think he will be fully appreciated until he's gone. And I don't mean gone. I mean until he's finished and he's out of the game. Like, he was exceptionally appreciated once he'd left, and there was a trouble with Ancelotti, etc. I think when people look back in 10, 15, 20 years' time, he'll be up there with the best managers that have ever been in Germany. Be that as a unified country or ununified country. I think he will be in the top three of any. But Manu's quite right. Let's see. They could just win the Bundesliga. They could fall out the Pokal and fall out the Champions League. So we'll wait and see. But for him to come back in and do what he's done, he's certainly showed that he is exceptionally talented. And I think if you look back over his career, where he's been across Europe as well. Some of the teams he's managed, like Bilbao, and obviously we've mentioned Madrid, Benfica, another big team. Schalke at the time were a decent side as well. So I think time, he will stand the test of time, and that's the show of a true great.
Yes, most certainly has. Seems to happen with a lot of coaches, isn't it? They're not fully appreciated until maybe afterwards. But Chris, let's talk about the next week that Bayern have ahead. Obviously, that could be the difference in maybe him going down as a very good coach to one of the greatest, as we just mentioned, as they've got a Champions League second leg return in Munich. They are leading from the first one with those away goals. And then 1 week later, they're going to be taking on Leverkusen away from home in the semi-final of the Pokal. What are the likelihood of Bayern getting through both ties? I mean, probably fairly favourable, right?
Yes, for me, they've got an exceptional chance because the league's been won. So he doesn't need to play a full-strength side against Gladbach or any of the run-ins. So, Hanover, Frankfurt, Köln and Stuttgart are there running. He won't put out a reserve side, but he can put out a vastly rotated side that will still be able to perform. So he can pick his strongest team against Sevilla, and he can also pick his strongest side against Bayer Leverkusen, who, I'm sure we'll get onto, but played exceptionally well tonight as we record this Monday night. So it will be, it's a luxury, I think, to tie up the league now, because he can just, play a heavily rotated side in the remaining 5 Bundesliga games and concentrate on the cups. So I think it all depends on the draw for the Champions League semi-finals, should they get through Wednesday night, which I can't see them not, to be honest, not in Munich anyway. Sevilla quite happily leak a few goals away from home. So I think that's a pretty much a done deal for me. 2 away goals, Bryce, is massive to come back from Spain with. So I think that one's done. We'll see how true that is as the week goes on. And then Bayer Leverkusen, a full strength Bayern Munich beats Bayer Leverkusen, and then you're looking at a final then, and it's a one-off game, so it's whoever's best on that day. So I think the fortune favours the brave, and they've won it early, and now they can just concentrate on the remaining games with maybe a little bit more relaxation, and what that does to teams. If you're relaxed and you're confident, then you play the way you can play. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's going to be hard pushed Well, I'll put it this way. I wouldn't like to bet that they won't get through both of those ties. Manu, how do you feel about both? Obviously, those away goals are massively favourable. It's going to be hard for Sevilla to turn that one around. But then they face Bayer Leverkusen next week. Do you see Bayer possibly getting through that?
Yeah, I think we all seen the Leverkusen game today. We will get to that in a bit, but it was quite remarkable. So I think that's almost the tougher of the two. It's a one-off, right? As Chris says. So if Bayern play like they have played all season, they'll win that. But I think Bayern will fancy their chance of going through themselves and maybe ending the season with a title. And then, I mean, the teams that are in the other semifinals, Schalke and Eintracht Frankfurt, they're both probably quite happy to win a title too. And it's a one-off, right? It's a lot of things can happen in one match.
Well, obviously, if they go through, they do pass Bayer. That means that, as you said, they will face the winner of Eintracht Frankfurt versus Schalke, which will be a tough tie nevertheless. But, Manu, if we just go to the Champions League, a tie that looks more favourable for them, it looks like that's closer to a done deal. Who would Bayern like to face in the next round, in the semi-final? Is there going to be a preference?
I don't think it matters, to be honest. All the teams that are going to go is going to be through, and I reckon it will be Liverpool and Barcelona and Real Madrid. I personally wouldn't, whoever's in the final in the end, I would like to have a final between two different countries. So I think it'd be best if Barcelona and Real Madrid get drawn to face each other in the semi-final, and then Bayern Liverpool. Simply, the simple reason is that I don't want to have an all Spanish final because I find them boring. I find finals that only include one country in a Champions League, there is no point. We might as well watch a league, like a cup final, a domestic cup final. So that'd be better. But I don't think it matters because in that level they're all fantastic sides for various reasons. Liverpool have pluses and minuses, Real have pluses and minuses, Barcelona have their pluses and minuses, and I think on that level it's really just daily form that makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to win the competition, you got to beat the best, eh? So all four teams will be tricky opponents, and probably wouldn't ideally like to face any of them, if being honest. But let's talk a little bit more about this Bayern squad. Chris, we've heard that Heynckes will be gone in the summer, but two players that are a little bit aging, if we're being honest, is Ribery and Robben, and we talked about how it might be best for one, if not two of them, to move on. But it looks like the possibility of new contracts coming their way seems more likely. How do you feel about this? Do you think it's a good move for Bayern, or do you think really they should be focusing on youth at this stage and let them go on?
Oh, well, it's a hard question, that, because you would say, look, they're both mid-30s, so Robben's 34, Ribery's 35. You would say, okay, let's try and bring some younger players in and blood them. But the way Frank Ribery ripped down the game against Dortmund the other week, turned them inside out. He did it like a man who's 25, let alone 35. So I think maybe a one-year extension for the pair of them is pretty good. So let's give them that, because they've been excellent servants to the club, and they could be the players that come off the bench next season if needed to make any sort of last 15. You've got any sort of problem in a game where you can bring on Arjen Robben or Frank Ribery. That's something to be that's something to be pleased on, no matter who you are, what side in the world. So I think whoever comes in will definitely have an eye on bringing youth players in. But I think to have that safety blanket of two of the best players in Europe to be able to call on them if needed, then I think that's something which any club would be proud of, Bryce, in the world, let alone in Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're experienced, but also they've got qualities that still go on, even though their age might be well, might be getting on a little bit, maybe past their best. But Manu, do you feel that Bayern need to focus more on the likes of Gnabry, who will be back with them, obviously, as spell Hoffenheim this season? Koeman also has had a rather positive season, may I say. Do you think they should be focusing a little bit more on these players rather than Robben and Ribery, as we just mentioned, or do you think they've still got more to offer?
I think so. I think the club tends towards giving both a new contract, but only under the premise that they will accept to play less in the coming year, because they want to have a soft transition to Gnabry and Koeman and maybe someone else that they're going to bring in. And I think that makes sense. I think that's the wise decision because, as Chris said, these two have been phenomenal. How often do you see it that two players like that stay at one club for, it's been over 10 years now. And, I think that's a phenomenal story. So to keep that wealth of experience seems to be the smart thing to do. But I think, it will all depend on whether those two will be willing to accept a diminished role.
And that's it. And obviously we know with big personalities, sometimes they don't take too kindly to that. But may I just say, between the two of them in the Bundesliga, they've got 10 goals and 6 assists. That's quite the feat, even if they are slightly aging. But let's move on now, further down the table, and let's talk about the European spots. We've seen this weekend Dortmund getting back to winning ways at home to Stuttgart. It looks like they're more on track to get Champions League football than ever. Chris, this was them bouncing back in the right form, wasn't it, after that Der Klassiker, beating, really?
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, then if you want to come back from a thumping, then this is a way to do it, to win 3-0. Although until the first Dortmund goal went in, just before half-time, Pulisic's cross come shot, I don't think they played particularly well. In the second half, once they had that goal under the belt, I thought they played a lot better. But any other team, I think they may have had a few problems there. But the second half, it was turned round. Whatever Peter Stoger said during the half-time break to turn his team round, it worked. They came out well. Obviously, they came out very well because Batshuayi scored, I think it was 4 minutes after the restart, and then they got the third goal from my man. Everyone knows I like him to bits. Maximin Philipp scored just before the 60th minute, and that was a game over for Stuttgart then. But I would say on another day, with another opponent, maybe they go into that half-time break 1-1 or maybe even 2-1 down. But, I'm full of football cliches this evening, Bryce. You can only beat the team that is in front of you, and that's what they did, and they beat them comprehensively in the end. I think we should disregard the first half and look at the second half, and I would be shocked now with 51 points, and a comfortable gap to 5th. If they were to fall out of the top 4, I would be exceptionally shocked if that was to happen.
Yeah, that's it. I would agree with you there, and obviously I'll put the question to Manu as well. If he thinks that third place or higher, being second, would be nailed on for Dortmund. But I also want to part that, I suppose, with the question of. Manu, you were mentioning the other day in our group chat, did Dortmund look that little bit better without the likes of Götze and Schürrle? With both of them in the side, they seem to be have a bit more movement, did they not?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that I mean, obviously the big difference maker is Royce. He's by far and large the best player that Dortmund have. And when he's on, everyone around him is better. But I think that, and Chris, you're a huge fan. I think quite rightly so. Maximilian Philipp is probably a way better option than Schürrle right now. And then I thought it was telling that the players that came on in the dying moments of the game were Sergio Gomez, the young Spaniard that they signed in the window, and Jadon Sancho. That means those two have definitely dropped quite significantly in the pecking order. Götze probably give him a bit of a lesson there, bit of time to think. And I think that with Schürrle, I don't think Schürrle will have a chance to even make that World Cup squad, but with Götze, there is a chance as long as he gets going again, because there were spells early on the Bosch where he was fantastic. So I think he just needs to kind of find his form and just focus on playing football maybe a bit more. But it is telling when, the youngsters are coming on instead of the established players. And I'm pretty sure that three with Pulisic, Philipp, and Royce, and then Batshuayi on top, for me, that is probably their best attacking four that they got at the moment.
And that's it, Chris. I suppose if we go to you, do you see Götze, Schürrle getting into that World Cup squad?
Schürrle, no, because although he has played a couple of exceptional games within the last month, he's been fantastic in a couple of games. I don't think he's got the consistency that Löw needs to take him to the World Cup finals. I think Germany is so littered with talent. I think André Schürrle slips down, and Mario Götze, obviously he's a World Cup winner. I just don't think he is ready. Now, whether he's taken for his experience, that would be a different matter, but there's players above him at the moment throughout the league, and he's had a very hard time, hasn't he, since he moved to Bayern, and then obviously he came back to Dortmund, and then he was out for a long time with his illness, and he seems to be getting back from that a little bit. But we occasionally see the old Mario Götze, but it's in flashes, maybe one tremendous cut pass, maybe one exceptional through ball. We're not seeing it game in, game out, and Manu's quite right. I think it was telling that when the substitutions were made on the weekend, Mario Götze stayed on the bench.
Yeah, most certainly. Manu, just before we move on to maybe speak a little bit about Stuttgart, you've been critical in the past few weeks about Pulisic maybe not being as good as what people had hoped he would be. I know he's young. I know that there can be a lot of pressure on young stars like this, but you were saying that he just wasn't quite good enough. Did you see any improvements on his behalf this week?
I mean, he scored that. It was a lucky goal. I mean, anyone can tell me, but that cross was not supposed to end up where it did. But I think everyone was better. And I think that's because he was playing with Royce. Of course, Fox Sports put it the other way around, but I think they're just, trying to deliver to the American market a little bit. Pulisic was improved, but he's not the best player, by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a very talented player that one day can be among Dortmund's best players. But Marco Reus is, for me, look, when Marco Reus is in that field, everyone around him gets better. And that is really, for me, the key component. You see it. You see the little things that he does. And even if he doesn't do anything, he draws people towards him, right? And gives the likes of Phillips and Pulisic the room. And I think that is really the big difference maker for me. So I saw Pulisic was a lot better because he had a better player to play with. But that's also maybe just sometimes I wrote my match report. Sometimes you just need that lucky moment, and then everything just goes your way, and then it's just the game becomes so much easier for you to play. There was a lot of things going against Dortmund for a long time, and including Pulisic, and then he just releases that cross, and you can see how it slips off his foot, and you see his facial expression that when he looks after the ball, he knows that cross didn't work out, and then it falls into the net, and he just stands there perplexed like everyone else. And I think that was such a kickstarter. From that moment onwards, Dortmund were playing good football. Sometimes you just, right, I mean, Chris, we probably all had it playing football. Sometimes you just need that moment. And I personally am not someone who believes in luck. You need to make your own luck happen, but it's really hard to explain it any other way than that sometimes you need that little bit of luck.
Yeah, of course you do. And, you know, I played striker, and if you haven't been getting a goal and one comes off your backside and goes in, sometimes that's all you need. It can be the luckiest bit in the world to snap you back into a little bit of form. And yeah, you saw his reaction. There's no way he meant for that to go in, but it's a great cross. It just goes in, and hopefully that's a little bit of luck he needed to get his game back on track, because we all know how good he is. When he's able to show his ability, he's unplayable. He certainly was last season at times.
Yeah, so guys, let's talk a little bit about Stuttgart. I feel the promoted side have had a rather successful season, though after this defeat they dropped down to 9th position in the league, which with 5 games left, 8 points off 6th, which would get them into Europe. You'd probably say, wouldn't you, Manu, that it's a step too far for them.
7th is enough too this year, Bryce, because of the teams that are in the Pokal. Unless Frankfurt finishes 7th, which I guess is possible. But right now it looks like that the Pokal winner will be in Europe anyways, which means the spot goes back to the league, which means 7th will be likely enough.
Yeah, which would be Hoffenheim sitting in 43 points.
Yeah.
Still 5 points.
But only 3 points behind Frankfurt, and Frankfurt are one of the teams. The other 3 are obviously Bayern, Schalke, and Leverkusen, who I think are going to play in Europe for sure. So Frankfurt could drop to 7th, in which case I guess it would be still enough. But Frankfurt could also finish in the Champions League. That's entirely possible. The race is very tight. But 7th might be enough, but I think that Stuttgart will not have enough to break into that top 7. Look, for me, that top 7 is more or less cemented. I could see maybe Gladbach challenging, but for me, the 3 points and the -5 in goals, I just don't see it. And Gladbach have not been consistent enough for me. And Hoffenheim were excellent. That Frankfurt-Hoffenheim game was one of the best games I saw. I know we're going to talk about it in a moment, but that's been one of the best games I've seen in a long time from 2 very, very excellent teams who I think are going to rack up a lot of points till the end of the season. And I don't think that Stuttgart will collect more points than those 2, which means they're not going to have enough to finish 7th. And the same goes for Gladbach for me. Yeah,
I think you're right with that top 7, if I'm being honest, if I had to pick as well. So I suppose that brings us to talking about the Sunday game that was very much a European playoff game in a way, as we've seen Eintracht Frankfurt take on Hoffenheim, a game that ended 1 apiece. Manu, you and I were messaging, saying about how entertaining this game was, and it feels like almost with this weekend that we were spoiled with entertaining games.
Yeah, we are. I thought this was a great match day. I think we've been complaining quite a lot through the winter, and now that spring is there, the games, I mean, today's game was excellent. We're going to talk about the next game, the Schalke Hamburg game was surprisingly amazing. I did the match report for the Bayern Augsburg game. It was a great game. The Friday game was really good. And then this game, it was only a 1-1 draw, but these were 2 teams that there is a reason why Nagelsmann and Kovac are mentioned when it comes to the Bayern job and the Dortmund job. These are 2 very good coaches, and I thought that tactically this was one of the best games that I've seen. Yes, it maybe should have had more goals, but great football. The level has gone up in the last few weeks. We've been very critical, but the last 2 or 3 match days we've seen some fantastic football, and this was one where we got spoiled.
Yes, indeed. Another goal by Serge Gnabry, which I would imagine that Bayern are going to be rather happy about that as well. Wouldn't you agree, Chris? You know, they're going to see this goal, this performance, and think, aren't we happy that we made that bit of business last summer?
Oh, yeah, they will, because he's just one of the most exciting players I've seen this season. They're going all the way back to the very first match day. he's just been tremendous throughout, and he's so exciting to watch. And not only has he got an ability to link up well with those around him, he's an all-round finisher. He can finish from in the box, but we all know he can smash one from outside as well and get it in the top corner or bottom corner. So he is a goal threat with his own feet or by feeding others. And Manu's quite right. Although it was 1-1, it was a very, very good tactical battle. And I think what we saw from this is that Kovac's Frankfurt can hold on to the ball very well and are able to use it. But something I've not seen maybe too much this season was, even only with 39% possession, what Hoffenheim did with the ball was excellent. So, they only had one less shot on goal, so it was 10-9, and they only had one less shot on target, 4-3. Now, that's with just under, you can't say a half, can you? But with considerably less possession. So that was very interesting, because I've been quite critical about Hoffenheim at times, where I think without the ball they've been out of shape and they've been torn apart. But the last couple of match days, they seem to have really whipped that back into shape, and we saw that in the other weekend, when they ran away with the game. But from controlling a game like that to come into a game like the one we've seen this weekend and still get something out of it and play very well without the ball, I think that is something maybe they were missing from Europe, which is, if they want to get into Europe again next season, I think maybe we're seeing a little bit of Nagelsmann's learning curve out in the open.
And Manu, just before we move away from these sides and talk about that Monday night game, another very exciting matchup. You mentioned in conversation the last few days that you feel that Hoffenheim aren't just going to be a stepping stone for players and coaches, now that they may just turn a corner this summer and maybe keep, the Nagelsmann, who is quite a prized possession, but also keep some of their highly rated players as well.
Well, I think Hoffenheim is always going to be a stepping stone, but I don't think they're going to lose quite as many players in the summer. The reason I'm saying that is because I think it's unlikely that anyone is going to be able to price away Nagelsmann this summer. And then the big news, of course, were that Demirbay has signed a new contract, which is, I think, a bit surprising considering the clubs that were interested in him. So yeah, he's off the market, and that's a sign, that someone like that is going to stay with Hoffenheim for now is a good sign. That doesn't mean he's going to stay there forever. I mean, a year or two he could still leave, right? Hoffenheim is still a club trying to develop for others and make money. They're self-sustainable despite having an owner. But I think the amount of players that they have bleeding might stop. And keep in mind, Bryce Gnabry is still going to be gone because he's only on loan, for example, right? So it's not completely, but at least the players that they've developed themselves, they might be able to hang on to them a little longer.
Yeah, well, let's just see what happens to them. It'd be nice if they weren't just to pass on those players and coaches, eh? But let's talk about that Monday night game. So we've seen Bayern Leverkusen away to RB Leipzig. RB Leipzig took the lead early doors, but ended up losing 4-1. Yeah, quite the turnaround. This is a hell of a result for Leverkusen, who now move up to 4th place. Chris, obviously, you watched the game. You enjoyed the game as well. Just one of the many great games that we've had this weekend. But the three of us talked, didn't we, saying, well, hold on, RB Leipzig are playing on the Monday night because of their European action last Thursday. We said that clearly they're going to be well rested for this game, but it, in a way, stitches them up going into their Thursday night game this week. But that didn't really seem to be the case. They didn't come out of this and win after being well rested. They lost this one, and now they've only got 2 days effectively until they're playing again.
Yeah, it's an odd one. I think this Monday night game works. I think there's only one occasion when it works, and that's way back in the very early stages of the groups. I think it works maybe twice for a team, and they're never going to play twice on a Monday night. It's going to be rotated through the teams that are in the Europa League. So for me, the Monday night game doesn't fit. I don't think it fits with the fans. You can see that by the attendance from the Bayer Leverkusen supporters. Obviously, we've travelled across Germany quite a lot. You and I, Bryce, Manu's obviously from Germany, so we know how big it is. And there's lots more things to be doing, traveling from the area where Leverkusen is all the way up to Leipzig on a Monday and then getting back for work on a Tuesday. So I don't think it fits for the club, and I don't think it fits for supporters as well. So it's a contentious one for me. And you could see, I think it was after the third goal went in, Leipzig were pretty much thinking about Thursday night, and they started to make a couple of changes, etc. So don't take it away from the game, though. It was phenomenal, and I thought Leipzig started the game very well, and they had a look of a team that wanted to finish this game off by half-time. That obviously didn't happen because Bayer Leverkusen got a game-changing goal on the stroke of half-time, and then it was a Julian Brandt and Kai Havertz show, wasn't it, after that? And the football was unreal from Leverkusen. I think what I found most interesting is just prior to the game, I did a vote this time, Bryce, and it's normally Manu who does a little vote. So I took to social media and asked who people thought would qualify for the Champions League. Now, I personally think Bayern Munich obviously have. Schalke and Dortmund will get through. So it was who comes fourth. Was it Leipzig, Frankfurt, Hoffenheim, or Bayer Leverkusen? Now, there's quite a lot of voting went in before the goals, and quite a lot of people went with Leipzig, but on this showing, I think maybe 13% of the people were right. It could be Bayer Leverkusen. I thought they were tremendous in this game, and it was a joy to watch for me. I think, Bryce, this was the best game of the match day.
Wow. What a statement after a match day of many great games. Now, I just say, Chris, I was one of that 13%, but we'll not focus on that right now. Manu, how do you feel? Who do you feel is going to get fourth place? This obviously is massive for Bayer Leverkusen and their aspirations to get into the Champions League. Do you think this result will also give them the confidence going into the final few match days? There's only 5 games left.
Oh, they can only help, right? I think it's so close to call. We, in a sense, have Bayer, Eintracht, and Leipzig fight for that final Champions League spot. I reckon Dortmund and Schalke are more or less through. Maybe small question mark. I know this sounds crazy, but I'll get into this a bit more when we get to talk about the next game. For me, is maybe Schalke because of next week's game, but. Yeah, I mean that this result helps you just beating your closest rival for that Champions League spot 4-1, right? And when you watch the full match, I thought that Leverkusen were typical for a VXL, for a company team. They were very efficient, industrious, because I think they scored their first 3 goals on pretty much their first 3 shots on goal. And I thought this was a very, very even match until that third goal went in. And then Leipzig, I think Chris is quite right? Leipzig took their eyes off and said, well, look, this game is obviously gone. We have a big fixture on Thursday. Let's take off our man-mans. Werner was taken off. Keita was rattled. He collided with Bernd Leno and was taken off right away too. Was then seen walking off. I think he will be fine. Looks like he will be fine anyways, and but was taken off anyways, right? So they didn't want to risk anything anymore. I think they recognized that particular battle was lost. So I think that Leverkusen, big 3 points, right? The fact that Volland scored first time in a long time, that's a big one too. You want your main striker to be in the zone and ready for when the big matches come up. So I think it's a very close race to call, but it definitely helps beating your one of your closest rivals when it comes to the Champions League race.
Oh, absolutely. And Chris, do you see RB Leipzig getting through to the next phase of the Europa League? They're obviously in prime position after a 1-0 victory last week.
Yes, I do, and I say that selfishly, Bryce, because I want to go and watch the Red Bull Europa League final. That's what I want to see.
Even though it's UEFA, aren't they? They're saying that RB Red Bull have nothing to do with Salzburg.
The other way around, isn't it? So the clubs aren't linked, but I want to see a full Red Bull final. I think it'll be. I just think it'd be funny, and people's heads would be falling off everywhere. So that for me, I'd like to see that. And it would almost be the student versus the master, wouldn't it? And I think it would be the sort of thing that Red Bull would thrive on publicity for years about. But I think they have got enough to go through. I think they've probably got one eye on the fact that this might be their best chance to get into the Champions League, with it being so tight. And Manu's highlighted how tight it is. As quite rightly said, with the games coming up on the weekend, it could get even tighter. So they're only, a few wins off an automatic Champions League qualification. So I think they should give all to this competition. And if they can get to the final, then, as we've said already, it's a one-off game, isn't it? And you never know what can happen. But I would certainly like to see Leipzig get through to the final, if not to help my accreditation, Bryce.
An interior motive, eh? Okay, guys. Well, I think that does it for the midweek European fixtures. And I was talking about that. Let's move domestically, but to look ahead to next week's derby between Schalke and Dortmund, the Riviera derby. And it doesn't get much bigger than this when both sides are placed second and third in the division. Manu, how do you see this going? It doesn't get much bigger than this for the two sides, does it, as far as a rivalry comes?
Oh, it's the biggest derby in German football, and I think it was ranked as one of the biggest derbies in world football, even there's a bunch of magazines that like to feature that, and they always feature this one. I think it's funny how a week can make a difference in perspective. I think that Schalke, I've been just waiting for the wheels to come off the Schalke train a little bit, because I think that they are, as a side, heavily overrated, and that they're getting results. A lot of their results have been very close fought results, and I think they have been slightly found out. The fact that they lost to Hamburg, who played a great match, but I think that will hurt them. And I reckon Dortmund will get the 3 points there and go past Schalke to take second place. And I think that could blow open that Champions League, the standings for the Champions League. Because you look at some of the other matches that are taking place that match day, right? Leverkusen are playing against Frankfurt. And then, of course, Hoffenheim has Hamburg. Two very difficult games, with Hamburg looking much better, much improved the last few weeks. So, yeah, this will be an interesting one. And based, as Chris alluded to, the results that are on this match day could give us a very good indication. But I reckon Dortmund will take second place on Sunday.
And Chris, would you second that? Who do you think is going to come out on top of this closely fought derby?
Well, you're quite right. It's closely fought, isn't it? I think if we have anything like the game we had back in November, we're in for a treat. I can't see it maybe being as goal heavy as that. And we've got to go back to 2015 for the last time there was a winner in this, and that was Dortmund for both games in that season. We've had a 2-2, a 0-0, a 1-1, and of course a wonderful 4-4 draw in the Bundesliga. So we're probably odds on to get a 1-1, but I would like to think we'll see a great game. And for me, it comes at a strange time for both clubs. As Manu's quite rightly said, Schalke are maybe stuttering a little bit. Dortmund, you don't know what you're going to get week in, week out with Dortmund. They can either steamroll teams off the park, or, they can play like a bunch of schoolboys. And, that's probably a disrespect to some of the schoolboys that I've seen play football lately, who've played maybe a slightly higher level than Dortmund in the past few months. But you just don't know what you're going to get with the derby. We've seen it not only in England this week, we've seen it across Europe, where you get surprise derby results, or you get teams that are leading at half time that end up getting beat, or you just get a really drab 0-0 affair, Bryce. So it's going to be an interesting one. I would like to see a 4-3 win for Dortmund, but I don't think it's going to happen. It'll probably be 1-1.
Yeah, that's it. Wouldn't it be fantastic to see a scoreline with as many goals as what we did last time? Dortmund were 4-0 up for it to finish 4-4. So yeah, I would be somewhat surprised if we got that many goals, but maybe the same ultimate outcome of a draw isn't a bad shout. Chris, though, may I say, at the Veltins Arena, Schalke are at home. With me saying that, they have not lost since 2013. against Dortmund. So there's a stat that could possibly mean nothing at all. But anyway, we'll move on further down the table, and we'll focus on the relegation battle. Unfortunately for Cologne, it's looked like any sort of comeback is going to be a little bit too late, as they failed to capitalize on what could have been a 6-pointer against Mainz, who are placed above them in the league. That finished 1-1 after them taking an early lead. It also seen Hamburg pull out a victory, even though nobody had expected it, against Schalke, as Manu just mentioned. So that means Cologne dropped to the bottom of the table. Chris, you did say a few match days ago that it would require 7 cup finals from Cologne. They didn't capitalize on that in the last 2 match days, and it seems like it's all coming to an end for them.
Yeah, I'm pretty content now that the bottom 3 is as we see it, and the bottom 2 will go down, and then Mainz will be in that relegation playoff. That's it, Bryce. I can't see anything else bar that, especially after Divock Origi's little bit of trickery on the weekend for Wolfsburg.
Yes, indeed. I would also agree with the 3 places, the bottom of the table. That would mean that Mainz would go into the relegation playoff, and I don't know, Manu, when we talk about the relegation playoff, so they're going to play who finishes 3rd in Bundesliga 2. It doesn't really work in favour, does it, of the lower league side?
Oh, it depends. Sometimes it does favour the lower league side. Sometimes it doesn't. It means, I think the team that's currently 3rd in Bundesliga 2, Holstein Kiel, is not strong enough to dislodge, if it is Mainz. We'll see. I think my beer bet with my dad is back on. If Hamburg win a couple more games, they might escape once again.
In saying that, though, does it make any difference to Manu when I say that Kiel, out of the 2 divisions, Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2, only Bayern Munich have actually scored more goals than them? They're joined with Dortmund as well. Does that make any difference?
I'm playing the lower league. I'm not having that.
I'm trying to clutch at straws here. I'm trying to make it interesting. Maybe there's a chance, right?
No, I don't think so.
No,
also, they emerged today that Köln apparently are going to sign the entire coaching staff from Kiel.
So. Okay. Good times. That more or less kills any optimism I have for Kiel. Thanks, guys. But yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about a bit of a controversy involving Niels Petersen. It seems that he was sent off, but he didn't see the yellow card, so he hasn't been sent off. Has been rescinded. Manu, talk us through this one. What exactly has happened here? I mean, it seems a bit baffling to me.
I think everyone is baffled except for the judges that made the ruling. Because, so Niels Petersen received a yellow card for, content, and then he received the second one shortly after. And he claimed he never saw the first yellow card or was told by the referee. And I think, the referee said, well, he told Petersen that he was shown a yellow card, so he didn't, feel like he needed to see it. The law actually is quite clear on this. We had Urs Meier on Eurosport explaining. Urs Meier is, of course, the former Swiss referee, very well-known Swiss referee who works for FIFA. Explained this to Eurosport, and it's quite simple. The yellow card is actually only shown for the journalists and the attendants to know the fact that their yellow card was shown. Originally, a booking was verbally. And it still is verbally. So when the referee has to actually, when he shows the yellow card, he has to also say yellow card, player's name and number, right? That's how it is done. And then it's noted down. And the referee says that that's what he did. So Petersen then claimed he didn't see it. He never knew that he was already in a booking. So when he went back, and complained shortly after and received the second yellow card, he was baffled that he was then quickly shown a red card as well. Now, originally the Bundesliga said this card stood, and then it went to the upper court, the DFB upper court, and that court ruled that this card didn't stand. The second one that is going to be rescinded, because this is the best part, guys. On the video, it was not apparent that Peterson was shown the yellow card, that he knew that he was shown a yellow card. I guess the video, you can't tell whether the ref said it to him. But this, I mean, Chris, this is crazy, because this blows open, this opens a can of worms, because now players could more or less run away from the referee and just hope not to basically ignore a yellow card shown to them, because if they ignore it and they can't hear it and they can't see it, it won't count. So we need a clear ruling on this. And I think Bryce mentioned it before the podcast. There used to be on FIFA 1994, you used to be able to run away from the referee until the yellow card would never be shown to you. So this is crazy, right?
They predicted the future.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I think what's even more crazy is if you look at the video replay, this is why I don't understand what the DFB court found, in favor of the player, because the referee clearly taps on his back and says something. So he will have felt the touch, and I'm sure, he would have heard him being told that he's being given a yellow card. Now, the only way I can see this happens in the next match day is that we see referees take a turn to be over dramatic is probably the wrong word, but you will get an exceptionally loud whistle blast and a German equivalent of number 9, get over here now. And then, stand up like we see in England quite a bit. The referees pull the players over. They make them stand up, eye-to-eye contact with them. Yellow card, show the card above their head. So they've got no, there's no ambiguity there. And I think that Peterson's probably just seen a little loophole that he thinks he can get around. This is the type of thing, though, that gets brought up at the end of season when the IFAB get together. So the 4 UK home nations and FIFA get together and they look at stuff that's gone on throughout the game across the world and they close these loopholes. And I will suggest that this loophole will be closed before the start of the World Cup, because you're quite right, Manu. Just run away, didn't hear it, sorry, unlucky.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think it's a bit ridiculous, but I suppose that's where we're going to have to end the podcast this week, guys. So I mean, obviously we've got Champions League, we've got Europa League happening all midweek. I'd imagine both of you are going to be rather busy. Chris, let's go to you first. What would you like to draw people's attention to, or what are you getting up to in the next few days?
Oh, well, it's a very, very busy few days because there's football on every single night, isn't there? So we've got football tonight, Mondays we record it, then, we're into Champions League action, Europa League action, and then, of course, Wolfsburg take on Augsburg next Friday. So, very busy week. So just keep your eyes locked on either my Twitter, which is at Chris78Williams, or at FootballGradLive.
That's it. There'll be plenty of match previews, match reports, and many other articles coming out on Football Grad. So on Twitter, go to at FootballGradLive. As Chris said, there'll be plenty for you. Manu, anything you'd like to draw people's attention to, or where can they find you online?
Yeah, people can follow me on Twitter, Manuel at Manuel Veth. It's going to be a busy few days, and as I said in the beginning of the pod, I'm heading over to Europe next Sunday. Flying back, I'll be in Paris at a conference, the Nanterre Paris University in Paris, and I'm giving a talk on Russia, football, and soft politics at the university there. And then, of course, back in the stadiums, then right after that, across Europe, doing a trip to Greece to visit our man Thomas Farines down there, and we're going to have something special planned with the project that he leads down there as well. So that's on the agenda, of course. And then, of course, we're hoping for Europa League and Champions League final accreditation, right, Chris? So that's long term. And then, of course, the World Cup is coming up. So yeah, it's not just this week. It's going to be a very busy couple months, Bryce. So everything about that can be followed. That can follow me at Manuel Veth, and then, of course, our account at FootballGradLive.
Wow, that is a lot going on. But guys, if you want to head over to Football Grad, as the other two guys have just said, if you've enjoyed the podcast, we really hope that you have, please get in touch online. You can get in contact with any of us on Twitter at our addresses that we just give you, or the Football Grad Live one. Also, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please leave some positive feedback on the likes of iTunes. We greatly appreciate that. We really would. I've been your host, Bryce Dunn. You can follow me on Twitter at BryceDunn11. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the midweek games. There's going to be plenty of action, I feel. And then, yes, even more action next week in the Bundesliga, as always. But until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, dich abzuholen.
One gift that never gets returned? Trick question. It's 3 gifts: beer, wine, and spirits. And with Drizzly, you can send the gift of drinks right to your loved one's doors. Drizzly lets you compare prices from local liquor stores on a huge selection of beer, wine, and holiday spirits, then get them delivered right to that lucky someone's door in under 60 minutes. And right now, Drizzly is giving customers $5 off their first order. Just enter promo code JINGLE at checkout. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.